Thank you very much. So, at least for those who tried to escape or couldn't make it to the end, sneak out, here I'm back again talking about Bio 26, part 2. So, thank you, Leah, because your introduction is just perfect for how and where bio is embedded in general. I think what I'm trying to do now is talking about what I have left in the tour, which is the commission projects of Bio 26. But maybe first, before I go into this, let me just briefly introduce ourselves as a curatorial team and also what Bio 26 was about. If you have not joined the tour before, this year's or this edition's or Bio's title was Common Knowledge, which I have curated in collaboration with Aline Lara Resende, who you see here. So the credits or the critiques go to the both of us. Both we are coming from museological backgrounds. Journalism is Lara's expertise, is Aline's expertise as well. And I got this invitation for Bio 26 when I was just about to start a new post at the Museum of Kunstgewerbe or Decorative Art in Dresden. And I was particularly interested in, how and what I'm going to do with this vast collection of artifacts that are stored in the depots and all that knowledge and information that is hidden and not accessible, mainly not accessible for visitors. So my interest was driven by this, whilst Aline's interest was driven very much also by the fact of all that is going on with fake news in regard to how the whole media world was distracted. So we concluded that we will work on this information crisis as we see is a bigger crisis than the climate crisis, because it is it's a boost of it as well. For those who've seen the exhibition upstairs, we tried to give kind of an introduction to our thinking of the biannual, which we also tried to organize according to Russell Ackoff's pyramid of data, knowledge, information, and wisdom. We added the layer of information crisis just to see where we depart from. While the works upstairs have not been commissioned, so those were all existing contemporary or historic works, we wanted to fuel as much budget into the commission project as Bio is a production platform. But the works upstairs also should give kind of a historic or an overview of developments of the past decades and also development of the information crisis. This bio is organized in 3 parts. So one of them is the central exhibition, which you have seen or can see afterwards. Then there are the 6 commission projects that we have organized around the city. And the third part is the events and programs that we have initiated in collaboration with partners around, well, actually not just Slovenia, but actually globally. So we had people with projects from South America to Europe, United States, whatsoever. So they have been exhibited at a place. So just in regard what Leah was talking, from the gallery to the city, and also in reappropriating space in the city. So we opened up an abundant underpass in the city center of Ljubljana, emptied out shops that were transferred into gallery spaces. Unfortunately, this you cannot see anymore, but it was a lively intervention, and hopefully also will fuel the idea to reuse this space for cultural and other events. So now I'd like to talk about the 6 projects that we have initiated all around Ljubljana. Here you see a map of Ljubljana with how and where those commissioned projects have been located. We have representatives in the upstairs galleries where we have little teasers of films and introduction to the projects. But for us, it was very important to work site-specific in that sense. Bio 25 was revisiting the countryside, so we visited the urban scape again, together with local partners. All these institutions that you can read upstairs, we picked according to the concept revisiting institutions of knowledge preservation, production, transmission. 4 of them are actually quite classical, I would say. So it's a library, it's a museum, it's a university, a news media house, and then there are 2 maybe less obvious, which is the botanical garden and also a retirement home. I will talk about each of them more in detail, and just listening to James's talk, I missed out the coffee house, or we missed out the coffee house, which definitely, and as we have learned, is a place for knowledge production, in particular if you come from Vienna. But since Bio sees itself as a global, or gives impulses on a global level, I think we also have chosen 6 institutions that are quite generic, which you could visit and find in every country or city. This is also the idea of scaling the concepts or the questions that we have addressed or visited during this bio. Just briefly, how this commissioned project have been generated. Mateusz has told about the history of bio deriving from the 1963 with the renewal with Jan Boelen with its anniversary edition of Bio 50 that introduced the concept of production platforms, mainly commissioned projects that are guided by known design studios or designers, and then an open call that invites emerging professionals, always been very cross-disciplinary, and we definitely adapted this successful concept since it is also, as Leah pointed out, a biannual that I always refer to as a very educative, and yeah, it's a platform that produces new knowledge in the field. With this bio, we introduced in the process a designathon in terms to speed up the process. So we had actually 2 phases. This is just a shot from the first phase that took place at Cultural Center, Sankaria Dome. And this first designathon was geared by 6 case studies or commissions or questions that we gonna revisit right now. And from the 180 applicants, 90 were invited to this competition. Let's say 18 teams working on 6 commissions or challenges, as we refer to them. And the first designathon took place in May 2019 with these 90 people, and the idea was really in fast speed to come from ideation to a prototype to an idea of a project. And through a jury process, we selected 6 teams that were invited to continue on a commissioned project. The second designathon was with the final teams that then developed a prototype from these ideas. The prototype was really meant to be not a final product, as it's pointed out here, but a working prototype that could also stand 4 months of bio in a one-to-one scale experience for visitors of Bio 26. Yeah, just a quick overview. Those were that was the jury, the advisory committee, Amelie Klein, Dejan Sudic, who you definitely know, I suppose. Aleš Pustov was, his background is startup industries or management. Johnny Goldin, who is a philosopher, and he did a lot of on data already, and Maya Vajan, who is a native and also a curator in many previous bios and know what is possible and is not possible. So all these people informed the process, and it also shows this sort of a collaborative selection process. So the first commission project we did in collaboration with the National and University Library here in Ljubljana, which is called NUK. The question that we posed to the team was, how can we add new functions to the old structure of libraries? Who's familiar with the NUK, the National Library here in Ljubljana? It's a landmark. It's one of the most important works of Jose Plečnik, a national hero and architect. And the library itself is built with a very programmatic concept of how to generate knowledge. So you enter the building through a dark marbled entrance, and while walking up the stairs and enter up in the reading room, which is brightly lighted, it's really that you have to suffer to go through all these learnings to gain knowledge and wisdom. While this still is kind of a concept of the, of an enlightenment or a very classical idea, today the library is kind of caught in this kind of architecture, which was definitely conceptualized in a pre-digital era, whilst today libraries face completely different challenges and questions. Here you see the teams. So as I said, quite a mixed cultural team, never worked together before. We also introduced the design mentors. In this case, it was Commonplace Studio, of whom you see some works upstairs in the central exhibition. It was also a purpose that we did not want them to design the projects, but so that they will be represented and referenced in the central exhibition, but that they only inform the process with their knowledge. And then we have experts in the institutions, in this case 3 librarians who actually work with the NUK. Saying this, I give you, so the challenge was actually that question, how this old structure of the library could be reused, how could the storage be made accessible, how also can the digital database of this library be matched with the physical experience. The library today more and more becomes a social place. And so they tried to address this with their project. So it's not the SAS commercial.
Serendipity Searcher was developed for the National University Library of Slovenia, and it's an installation done for the Design Biennale with an attempt to create access to the database of very valuable holdings of NUK. It is showcasing a variety of special collections ranging from postcards, posters and other visually very appealing materials that are usually accessible by standard browsing and search engines. So this acts sort of as a new way of searching the materials through physical browsing and by connecting items visually, meaning that the items that appear on the display are connecting through chance encounters, connecting visual interactions and visual narratives, linking images based on physical and visual properties, allowing you to access materials that you normally wouldn't access just by keywords, subjects, chronology, alphabetical order, authors, years, and other usual inquiries. How it works, it is positioned as a physical display, attempting to create a social experience in the actual building of the library, which is done by a famous architect, and it's a sort of a monumental architectural building by Jože Plečnik. So it's positioned in a way that it's functioning as a sort of an alienated object, however, working well in the actual space of the library. And it showcases, which is visible through polarized filters, a collection of 16 items at a time. And the search starts once the visitor is interested or appealed with a specific image. So if we would be interested in the image of illustration, we would select it and select another one that is based here. And it generates a collection of linked images based on visual properties. So it would read either magazines or things that are based on the same illustration. So you need to kind of search out the remaining connections made. So by connecting the images that appear, choosing the one of your interest, a storyline appears that is also addressing something that's featured on any of the images. It could be the way that it is illustrated, the technique that it's made with, or an image of a figure of a portrait that it is displaying. So by using the remaining plates, you would investigate the remaining parts of the display and have it showcased in front of you. The visual connections are there to inspire you and maybe create chance encounters that wouldn't normally happen through a regular search base.
So that was Maya Kula from the group. And now how do I get back? Open knowledge, maybe this. How do you get back to the presentation? So that team particularly tried to, cope with this strong architecture, create a new.
Course K is the structure that you see behind me, and it is open.
So we're not going to go through all the 6 by having them explain, but a few of them. So yeah, that team really kind of tried also to cope with these challenges that the museum has, creating a display within this strong heritage and language of this architecture, and did or proposed this quite physical interaction with the collection based on their databases. Another venue that we have revisited was the University of Ljubljana. There the question was, how can we design new learning ergonomics for universities? In this case, it was very much about how can architecture or environments promote the concept of interdisciplinarity. Of course, like all the universities, this is not on one building, it's spread all over the city. You have all kinds of different faculties, and usually interaction between those knowledge silos is very seldom. So this was also for this group a very challenging topic. I think it was even, I mean, that is also interesting with this bio, is that we had a lot of processes going on, in regard to, rather than installations at the end. So this team, for instance, worked on a very collaborative process with all kinds of student groups, with faculties. They definitely tried to fight also this hierarchy of knowledge between students and professors, which at the end was a really, I mean, they got completely also caught up in this conflict between the faculties and students and professors. Anyways, they started with a quite optimistic approach, or what they tried to propose was kind of a mobile kitchen. They called the project Course K, while the kitchen itself is not innovative in itself, but it was introduced as an environment, as a tool, in public spaces of the university. And it was, whenever they tried to collaborate with the faculty, it was much more problematic than if they just offered this kitchen in the public space, and it was reappropriated by the students themselves. The other, so that kitchen is still traveling the university. Another project we initiated or questioned was, how can we create meaningful online-offline experience in museums? That's something I talked before. It's very similar to the situation of a library, where we have this architecture, some of them remain from the 19th century, and definitely were built in another concept of education and displaying objects. In this case, we picked a particular collection. It's the temporary Slovene dance archive, which was gathered by Rok Vela, who is a choreographer, and which is located at the Museum of Contemporary and Modern Art here in Ljubljana. It's a very special collection, and to build this prototype, it was also important to limit this down. That installation also was kind of technology driven. Can you again switch it, please?
Hey, I'm Cyrus from London. I'm a designer and artist, and I'm part of the team working here at MSUM on a project called Bodies of Knowledge. And Bodies of Knowledge is all about reimagining what an archive can be. So right now we're in the archive of Rok Vela, and this is the temporary Slovene dance archive, which typically is a site of information retrieval and knowledge retrieval. And we thought we could use design, technology and art to try and reimagine what this archive could be, and reimagine the way that people experience and interact with the archive. And since the archive is a dance archive, we thought it would be very fitting to work with the natural language of dance, which is of course movement. So within this space, we invite people to come in and dance, perform movements and gestures in order to access the archive. And what we're doing here is working with machine learning technology to basically detect body part movements and understand what people are doing in the space. And depending on what they do, we will display certain types of content. So for example, to be very concrete, we have 3 stations. One is for the head, one is for arms and hands, and the last station is for feet and legs. And within each station, we ask you to perform a gesture with that part of the body, and you will then see archive content that has been categorized by the algorithms related to that category of the body. So for example, if I make a gesture with my feet, I will see content related to feet. And that's the basic premise of this installation. And it really came from this sentiment that we had as a team in the early designathon here in BO26 around trying to create a dance between machines and humans. And I think we've achieved that in this space. So this has been very much a collaborative effort. There are designers, technologists, writers, and we have a really wonderful mentor guiding the process. And we've had a lot of great help here from the institution itself here at MSUM.
So since we have to speed up that process a little, I think you got a good insight of what this project was about and how this could become kind of a playful tool to physically interact with the collection. So the next ones I'm more or less talking through. The botanical gardens to us was also quite an important venue to revisit, since we wanted to look at all the knowledge embodied in plants, seeds, and so on. And the challenge for the experts, the botanists, is there that, I mean, it's a highly scientific field of knowledge, and how can visitors interact with the knowledge of this of that plant. It was also very much about to revisit kind of old knowledge that our predecessors know just by knowing plants in the woods or in the meadows, what they were good for or bad, and how to reinvestigate in this knowledge. So the team, guided by future farmers and with the two botanists, the team collaborated with village people nearby Ljubljana to revisit that old knowledge, and then they depicted 3 plants that were also in the botanical garden, and they developed a tangible and physical installation that kind of talk about, it's a storytelling installation about these plants. The other institution that is not quite obvious was the retirement home, that we find kind of interesting, because usually retirement homes are places where people are live towards the end of their lives. They're sort of stored away, but what is also stored away is their knowledge, not just their that they gain throughout their professional life, but also their experience, and also the sort of bodily knowledge. So what we wanted to address here is how this could be, how there could be a cross-generational exchange of knowledge. And the team around Katrina Dankel and the team of the knowledge mentors, they developed an experience that you can look up the website later on, which transforms the retirement home in an academy of life. As a matter of fact, the retirement home here nearby MAO is a very progressive one. So they offer a lot of program, and it's also open to the whole public around. So for this neighborhood of Fujine, and it's just a matter of why don't other citizens don't go there to participate in courses. So what the team did, there is a little interaction in the cafeteria here at MAO. It's to really make people aware of their retirement and their future ideas or concept, how one would actually spend retirement and what is needed for possible programs and so on. And then they actually used the programs that have already been in the retirement home and kind of restaged them or gave them a new corporate identity in terms of making it accessible to other generations. And this last commission project was in collaboration with Delo. It's one of the big daily newspapers, also the oldest one here in Slovenia, that we revisited in regard to this question: how can we restore credibility in news media? Of course, these traditional news media houses not just went through the whole progress of digitalization and also how and where journalism is going to take place in our days. It's also a matter for them how they can reuse their infrastructure. For instance, in this case, the team was revisiting the archive and how could this archive be used for the current debate or daily debate In their case, they revisited events of the 1968 student revolts. They designed a particular mobile cart that was traveling around the city and staged public conversations that were partly based on the archive of the newspaper, as well of current debates. So they matched actually time victims from 1968 from the Students' Revolt with students from the Friday for Future platform here in Ljubljana. So those are the 6 commissioned projects and prototypes that went on during Bio 26. Some of them are still in use, which I think is also one of the important outcomes of this bio. In regard to the question, also in the framework of future architecture, I think something we did not address specifically was really the infrastructure and the architecture of those knowledge institutions, the library, the university, the museum, or the retirement home, which I think are major architectural tasks, or also challenges in the future. Or the question how we can repurpose the botanical garden, meaning how can we actually, make our cities and urban places a better place for natural knowledge. So, yeah, coming to an end, those are the sort of 6 case studies that we have introduced during Bio 26. All the knowledge that we have gathered, you can revisit upstairs in the exhibition, but also in this selection of magazines that we have dedicated to each of the fields from information crisis to wisdom. The knowledge issues also showing all the 6 projects that I have introduced you to. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.